All right, guys. Today's lesson is, remember how we had addition properties? Well, now we're going to have multiplication properties. So the pages that you guys are going to use right now are pages 423 to 428. Right, make sure you put a staple in it right there, and make sure you have your name on it. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to come up to me after you've at least attempted the problem, and I will indeed help you. All right, so feel free to do that. The essential question every single day for lesson 8 is, how is multiplying and dividing decimals similar to multiplying and dividing whole numbers? All right, so let's get started. Math in My World, example 1. A coach had 16 players in each of 2 groups. Each group scored 5 goals. Find the total number of goals scored. So the first thing that we're going to be talking about is we have to find 16 times 2. Hang on. So we're looking for the group of 16 times 2 times 5 because we have 16 players in 2 groups, and if each scored 5, so we're taking 16 times 2 times 5. So what we've done here is we can easily multiply 2 and 5 together and then change the way the numbers are grouped. So this is the associative property. And I don't know if you remember when we talked about the associative property. That's who you associate with, what group you're in. Remember that? Like, you're outside at the playground, you're talking about who you associate with. All right, so that's the associative property, and it means that you're grouping them. And these right here, these parentheses are your groupings up there, okay? So what we're doing is we're going to regroup these. Again, the associative property of multiplication states that the way in which factors are grouped does not change the product. Okay, it does not change the product. So it's easier to find 2 times 5. It's a little bit easier than doing this, right? It's a little easier than doing that. So you can group the numbers differently, and it doesn't change it. Okay, it doesn't change it at all. All right, so we're regrouping here. So we're rewriting it out, essentially. We're saying 16 times the group 2 times 5. Okay, we're just and that way makes it easier because we know that 2 times 5 is 10. That's easier to do. And then we know that 16 times 1 is 16, and then there's 1 0 left over down here. All right, so the total number of goals scored is 160. And again, remember how we wrote it on the side here on one of those assignments, we wrote the associative property. Because again, I would rather than have to say, well, 16 times 2, I know is 32, but I don't want to have to do 32 times 5 in my head. All right, so that's why, I could do that in my head, but I would rather do 16 times 10 because that's a lot easier to compute in my head. See if my pages are nice and stapled. I'm going to turn the page here. Okay, now we have another one called the commutative. Remember, we had commutative property of addition. Well, we also have a commutative property of multiplication as well. And if you remember correctly, that just means that the order in which factors are multiplied, again, does not change the product. So it doesn't matter if you do 2 times 7, that's going to equal 14. Well, 7 times 2 also equals 14, right? So it doesn't really matter which order you do that in. It's the commutative, okay, the commutative property.
I'm gonna guess them.
All right, so it doesn't matter again, and all this is asking you to do is what's the unknown over here. What we know that 17 times 35 and 5/10. Well, all it's asking for is what should be here. Well, if we use the commutative property of multiplication, it's going to be the number that's missing, so it's going to be a 17 there. Because again, it doesn't matter which order you multiply, you're still going to get the same answer. So the unknown here is 17. Example 3, find the unknown in the equation 17 times something equals 17. And we're going to use the identity property of multiplication. Again, the identity property states that the product of any factor and 1 equals the factor. And this is a factor, okay? This is a product. This is your answer, product, right here, okay, product. So this other factor, so it states that the product of any factor, 17, and 1 equals the factor. Okay, look, 17, so that has to be a 1 right there. So the unknown is 1. The identity. Think of identity as like, I know my identity. Like, I know who I am. I'm number 1. I know who I am. That's kind of what I always think of as identity is like the number 1, or maybe the I in it. I am the number 1. To remember that's the identity. Now we can do a little drawing lines here. So we have 6 and 2 tenths times 100 equals 100 times 6 and 2 tenths. Is that the identity? Is that the commutative or the associative property? Hopefully you said that this is the commutative property, because again, it doesn't matter which order these go in. It's still going to be the same. This group 8 times 2 times 3, and then over here we change the groupings. So hopefully you remember that this is the one that you associate with your groups, the group that you associate with. And of course, the last one is times 1, man. It's identity times 1. So this one says, explain how you could use mental math and multiplication properties to find this problem here. Remember, I'm looking for this when I go to check these if you've done this problem as well. And again, all you would have to say that you do is I look at these numbers and say, well, 2, this is tough to, that right there is tough to multiply. I can't really do that in my head. I really can't do 5.5 times 2 either, but I do see this right here. It's 50 times 2, right? And 50 times 2, well, you get 50, and 2, you get 100. So now we have 5.5 times 100. And then would you remember how many? We have 2 zeros right here, right? We have 2 zeros. So that means we're going to move this decimal point 1, 2. So our answer is going to be 500, and then we got this little spot right there, 550. Okay. All right, so to use properties of multiplication to find each product mentally. All right, so we have to do things mentally here. So we're going to find, then it says show your steps and identify the properties that you use. So this is fairly easy. All right. I see these two numbers here and I realize that they're not easy to multiply. So I'm going to find two numbers like 5.1 and 50 is not really easy, but I do see, I'm going to regroup this and I'm going to say 5.1 times the group 2 times 50. And that is going to be, again, the grouping. So we're going to say that's the associative property. So then I say this equals 100 times 5.1. And then I say 5.1. There's 2 zeros here. So I'm going to move this over 1, 2, put a 0 in place of this. So my answer is 510. So 510 is my answer. Next one. Okay, so I look at some stuff here and I say, well, 6 times 4 is 24, but then I don't think I can multiply that by that. 2.5 times 4, hey, that's like 25 times 4, right? So I know 2.5. If I go up here and say 2.5 times 4, that's 20. This is 10, right? So I'm going to regroup and I'm going to say 4 times 2.5 or 2 and 5 tenths times 6. Again, that's the associative property right there. And then I already said this equals 10 times 6, and then that equals 60. So my answer is 60 right here. Pretty simple. The next one is 9.8 times 500 times 2. Again, you should be able to see that this is a pretty easy one as far as saying 9.8 times the group 500 times 2. Again, associative, right? Associative. So we're going to say associative property. Okay. And then this is going to be 500 times 2, so that's 1,000 times 9.8. And then 9.8, we're going to move it over 3 spaces because 3 zeros. So we're going to say 1, 2, 3. So decimal goes there. So we have 9,800 for that one. And then this one, again, we're going to regroup again. We're going to say 1.4 times the group, because I say 50. Anything with zeros is what we've always said. Zeros are a lot easier to deal with. And then I see that this is 10, and then there's 2 zeros, so we have 1,000 again. Again, associative property. Associative. and then 1.4. So 1.4, there's 3 zeros right here. So we're going to say 1, 2, 3. So we have the decimal goes there, so 1400 is our answer for that one. Okay, down here at the bottom, we have to decide which property that we're using. All right, so 19.5 times something equals that. Hopefully you can see that that's going to have to be a 1. So what is that? Yeah, that's the identity property. Anything times 1, remember? This one here, 34 times 65 equals 65 times, that's going to be 34, right? And that's going to be the commutative property. Doesn't matter which order you multiply them in. That's the, you're still going to get the same answer. Down here at the bottom, we have 2.1 times something equals 4.3 times 2.1. So again, doesn't matter which order we have. So this would be 4.3 right there. And again, that's commutative property. The dead giveaway with the parentheses right here would be the dead giveaway for the associative property. And you just look at which number is missing. You got a 17 and 17, you got a 5 and a 5, well, the 2 is missing. The 2 is missing right there. Okay, the back side. Elijah and 2 of his friends are each paid $20 per afternoon for stuffing envelopes. If they work 5 afternoons, what is the total amounts of their earnings? So Elijah and 2 friends, how many people are there total? 3. Okay. Yeah, 3. And then they're each paid $20. And then if we did it for 5 afternoons, how much would they make? So that's where you would look at and say, well, I think I would rather multiply these two together because that's going to give me 100. Well, 3 times 100 is 300. So they're going to make $300. Replace the blank in this number with a number greater than 10 so that the product is easy to find mentally. So it has to be greater than 10. So we're looking for a number that we could basically multiply this 5 by. That's greater than, so we can't use 10, but it has to be easy to multiply with this. So we look at it and say, well, 8.7, okay, times a group times 5. So what could we do? 11 gives us 55, but that's hard to do. So I would choose 20 because, again, that gives us 100. So 8.7 times 100. And then we just have to move our decimal spot 1, 2, which would be right there, which would give us 870. Now we could have used 100. We could have used not 100. Sorry, we could have used 1,000. Okay, any of those numbers above that. Sorry, you're right. 200. Could have used 200 because that would have given us 1,000 right there. Each juice box contains 6.4 ounces. Each value pack of juice holds 10 juice boxes. If you have 50 value packs, how many ounces of juice do you have? So you have 6.4, 6 and 4 tenths, times 10 times 50. Okay. Now, this one, we're going to have to probably do a little multiplication. We're not really going to be able to do this in our head because if I'm looking at these numbers, none of these really kind of go well together. So we're going to go ahead and multiply those two, and that's going to give us 500 because you have 2 zeros times 6.4. Okay. Now we just got to go up here and say, well, what is 6.4 times 5? That gives us 20. This gives us 32. Okay, 32. Move it over one space, you get 32. But then look, you got those 2 zeros that you forgot about down there. So you're going to write 3, 2, and then put 2 zeros. So you're going to have 3,200 ounces of juice in that. All right, like we always do, mark those out right there. The homework, okay? Let's pay close attention to what we have to do on the homework, of course. You're going to be setting these up right here where you're going to be marking a drip, like you're going to be marking what property that it is. And I'm only expecting you to write like associative, commutative, or identity property. So, for this one right here, again, use properties of multiplication to find each other mentally. I'd underline mentally, and then identify the properties that you used. So a lot like we did on this page right here. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and say see page 425. Page 425, numbers 4 through 7. Okay, that way you'll know how to do these two problems right here. And then right here, you're going to basically find the unknown right there. All right, and it doesn't really ask you, but I also want you to write, tell me the property that you are using here. Tell me the property that you're using right here. Okay, so put a little star down here, put a little star down here, like that, and then tell me the property. So I'm going to put a star so you know that's where that's going to go, that you're using it for those. And then on the back side, again, just regular old multiplication problems, figure out which ones you have to multiply, make it easier to work together. This one here, you have to write an actual sentence yourself and just show how the associative property can help you solve something. So again, you want to write a multiplication problem that you can move the parentheses to help you solve it a little easier. All right. So, and then these two are pretty self-explanatory down here at the bottom. So again, good luck. Make sure you have all this stapled together. Turn it all in, 423 to 428 when you're finished, and turn it in the math box, and then just go ahead and work on Prodigy when you are finished. All right, good luck. If you have any questions, either log into Google Meet with me, or you can come and raise your hand and I'll come help you, or Miss Lisa will.